Welcome back to the Realm Podcast. As always, I am your host, Robert Williams. Today, I am joined again by Brian Waltermeyer. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Brian Waltermeyer, CEO, founder, DLT Alert, or the first embedded cyber warranty coverage using blockchain to auto adjudicate claims. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been about a month since we last had you on, so I figured it'd be a good time to do the whole check in, see how see how you're doing, but also now that we've broadened horizons and spoken to some other people, I'd love to kind of come back to the well and see your opinions on some of the thoughts that we've had from some of the other guests that we've had. Most notably, the internet space and the web space that is always constantly evolving is this big thing that keeps getting brought up is Web3 as the new technology. So, just kind of broadly speaking, I just kind of wanted to get your opinions on that. Just simply put, Web3, what it's used, how you use it. Is DLT using it? What's the vibe on Web3?
That's a good question. It's appropriate. I just returned from Barcelona last week from Chainlink, their third annual SmartCon. Been attending that for the past 3 years. And they are really at the forefront of what's called cross-chain interoperability and allowing different, basically blockchains to communicate with other blockchains and verify assets and things across multiple chains. The big takeaway is that the conference itself is growing every year. It was hosted overseas this year, and the technology that's being showcased there, it to me is just fascinating. The use cases are myriad, and to see the development of some of the companies that are really, taking a stake in this space, just year over year, exploding. For example, a company called Space and Time, which last year at SmartCon was, to me, relatively new. This year, much more clear interface functioning, and they had a one-on-one with one of the I don't know if she's database or something at MySQL from Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
One-on-one with this person talking about how space and time technology could be used to help basically collaborate or extend access to blockchain for MySQL at Microsoft.
Oh.
So that's a pretty big from kind of like, almost nowhere in my opinion, to talking to one of the biggest database providers in the world about how they can start to dip their feet into the Web3 space with validation and automation. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like for the startup industry, a year can be a long time or no time at all. And I feel it
Right.
sounds like for them, they took good advantage of that year.
Yeah.
Um,
No, really interesting what they're doing. I sat in on that and another a much more just customized small scale conference with their CTO. It's just really amazing because when you hear about what they're building and why it's being built that way and how databases on chain will need to have certain properties and functionalities that just aren't there today. Um, it's just really expansive to think about.
right. Well, I mean, I'm sure you're also going to see, when you go to a convention specifically for the thing, you're going to see the emerging is and the cutting edges of those
Yeah,
things taking advantage of those technologies. So
yeah.
it's really kind of neat seeing what people are doing with the blockchain and the Web3 and stuff. But did you see any vendors or any components of people utilizing smart contracts while you were there?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of them using smart contracts. Had uh, some in-depth conversations with a startup out in New York City that's doing zero knowledge proofs, which I
Zero
think could be an
knowledge.
interesting component for us to add in the future to DLT Alert. And basically, what they do is, and they're not the only ones doing zero knowledge proof or verification, but
Mm-hmm.
imagine uh, when I graduated from college, I worked at a bank for like 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that happen when people bring checks in, they say, "Hey, I want to cash this third-party check." So we would pick up the phone, we would call the bank whose check is issued on, and we say, hey, is there the check's written for $1,000, and we call and we say, is there a minimum of $1,000 to cash this check? They're not going to tell us how much is in the account. They're not going to tell us anything else extraneous about the account information. Just that, yes, you could process that check for cashing, right?
Okay.
So that's obviously an analog example, but imagine that same process needing to happen in an automated fashion, right? So
Okay.
a DLT alert, we are validating claims with smart contracts and embedded data, and our partner, who is a Web3 reinsurer, is monitoring or sniffing the blocks that we produce on chain, and then they are basically saying, hey, we accept this claim from DLT alert, let's release funds for that policy. And what do they really need to see on chain? Because this is a public blockchain, right? This is Polygon. So anybody can get onto a viewer and see these blocks. Anybody, right? Anybody who has an internet browser can get on to see this stuff. So what really needs to be on what needs to be on chain for our reinsurance partner to accept our claim, but without revealing anything that could be detrimental to our policyholder, right? So we're using a public transparent modality that's immutable but transparent to issue a claim on a cyber attack and release payment of funds. So that's really, really personal, private, corporate information. First of all, nobody wants anyone to know that they got hacked, right? That's why compliance initiatives mandate that you do it by law, because they wouldn't do it otherwise, right? And so they don't want any competitor knowing this. They don't want any customers knowing this. They want to be able to release that information, if at all. So for us, we're leveraging these amazing technologies like blockchain and smart contracts, and it's facilitating an entire validation and payment system that's highly expeditious and trustworthy and transparent. But at the same time, how do you make it so it's not too transparent? How it doesn't create risk for our actual policy holders who have just been hit with a ransomware attack, right? So then you get into the zero knowledge proof, where kind of replace all of that corporate data, all of the attack data, all of the attack verification that we produce internally, and the coverage amounts and all those things, right? With the monies that are owed to them, right? Are they owed 100% of the policy? Are they owed 10% or 0%? How do you transmit that in a public forum in an immutable fashion to the point where a third party will trust it, release the funds to pay the policyholder without releasing too much private information? So it's like, again, I'm at the bank, I'm at bank A, I'm calling bank B because there's a customer in here who wants to cash $1,000 check that we don't know from anywhere. So all we ask is, hey, here's this guy's account. Is there $1,000 in here to cash it? Yep, you could go ahead and cash it. We'll clear it on our side. Again, analog example, transport that 25 years into the future, and that's where we are now, that has technology that can create those validations by going into the database, by going into the source data and saying, yes, this is true data, without revealing all of the data, right? So I think that was one that I was really impressed with, and that I can see us implementing in the future to create more trust and create a more expeditious process.
Well, absolutely. I think in relation to the DLT process and products, one of the things that we're trying to do is prove that things are happening as they are, and once we have quote unquote proven that something has happened, that's what gets written to chain. So like that, the what's the phrase? The verifiable truth is, hey, did somebody have an event? Yeah. 13 of their machines got hit with ransomware. Well, we've got that in a log. We can strip all the customer and client information out of it. We just have, boom, here's a log that says 13 machines were infected. Send that over. And then
That's right.
similar to what you're saying is the zero knowledge is, oh, hey, they were hit, 13 machines were hit. Their coverage for 13 machines would be $1,500 payout per machine. Does there, do they have enough coverage to cover that? Sure. Here. And here's the payout.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, that definitely makes sense,
And
building the blocks together.
how can you increase trust in something that is completely transparent without there's enough trust to let the third party release the funds, but not enough information to embarrass or hurt the reputation of the
Right.
person who's already suffered, right? And space and time does do some stuff like that. These other guys, Polly Lang, I think their name was. It just it's just really amazing technology that's coming out, and to be able to be at the forefront and a company that could use it and implement it and take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's for us, it's something that sets us apart from any other insurtech, because
Right.
there's really not too many that are leveraging these technologies at this time. There's some cool ones doing some embedded things like that, but not like this, not like this.
Well,
Not
yeah.
and,
It's
and that's what the future will demand. Is
well, yeah.
higher trust, higher throughput, transparency.
Well, more and more trust. I mean, that's one of the whole crux of the DLT alert warranty is basing payouts based off of actual events that we can pull from your logs from your
Right,
systems. So like that's
right.
that like but going to the smart con and seeing these conventions of like, other people utilizing the technology and seeing the way they're using it, I think is a really great way to expand your own offering of what your company can do with it. I mean, for the longest time, um, I mean, this is a slight divergence, but the NFTs, big blockchain thing, it was a big buzzword a couple years ago. NFT this, NFT that. But recently, I discovered a company. Um, the name is escaping me at the moment, but they issue concert tickets as NFTs.
Oh yeah,
And at that point, and like when I read that, I was like, that makes sense. Because when
yeah.
NFTs first popped up, it was like, oh, it's artwork. That's like, oh, it's this, and I'm like, but you could just right click and save an image, and how is that an NFT? But like, so finding the
Well, why should I
use,
pay for that?
right? So it's finding the use for the technology, and that's I think definitely what helps people, not people, what helps companies find their footing is finding an actual use for the technology, not innovating for innovation's sake, but actually saying like, hey, here's a great technology. What's the best way we can use this? And like for DLT, for the warranties, it's like, hey, we're, you know, taking the real world data of your antivirus, cross referencing that with a database, and just using that, I guess, in effect as a zero knowledge payout for your warranty. So that's, it's taking the technologies and just applying them in the right way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to begin, it's not exactly zero knowledge. We're just more currently as a limited knowledge. We're exposing or we're exposing minimal knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But the real key is to expose just what's needed to be exposed, but to still have that level of trust that there's enough of a basis there that can be proven that this is real. So there might be a little bit of information that is true, and that's enough to release a payout. I'm on the phone, customer name, dollar amount. That's enough. But could it be more thorough or more secure if I if we were validating social security, address, phone number, last three transactions with this account without me as a third party being privy to that? If there was a way to have a system that's verifying that depth of account information or incident information without anyone being really privy to it, but being able to put a seal on it and put it into a public immutable format that can be reviewed and maximize the level of trust and minimize the level of visibility into the actual information. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And to have it happen in an instant. It's not picking up the phone and doing
And you
these
don't
things.
gotta
But
wait for somebody to be in the office and call, and it's like, oh, well, that person's out. No, but this,
yeah,
all this stuff happening instantly. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a great focal point of where the technologies are going, where they can go and what they can do, and kind of the
Yeah.
power that's behind them is all this automatic authentication happening behind the scenes. The
Yeah.
big buzzword that was there for a longest time was zero trust.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're finding ways of adopting that into different things, even if we're not calling it zero trust. The concept is there.
The Web3 people like to call it trustless,
Right.
which to me is the same as zero trust, which is more of an IT term. Another cool thing I'll just mention that they're working with is along these lines of kind of zero knowledge, but it's a different format, is homomorphic encryption, where you could go dabble into a complete database, say patient data in healthcare, for example, and make specific requests to that data, but only be able to have visibility into the results of your query without revealing personal identifiable information, things like that. So
Hmm.
it almost acts like you're almost dealing with encrypted data, but in a functional way that can yield you results without yielding information that shouldn't be disclosed. So
Hmm.
imagine doing a database query for patient information and saying how many patients in this hospital network have diabetes. Okay. And they say, you know, you know, whatever, 3.5 million have diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what areas are they located in? What neighbor? But they never reveal anything specifically revealing about an individual. But you can query databases like that with this format
Hmm.
and and not become privy to the actual data that's sitting on the same database entry, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's definitely a neat use case, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's awesome, especially because we've done a lot of work in the healthcare space and stuff like that. And it's but blockchain, immutability, and some of these new technologies that are working with in those new formats and rails
Mm-hmm.
enable this to be possible now, where before it wasn't.
Right. Well, and that's definitely, like I said, the technology is moving in a direction, and I think we mentioned with motion last week about as these technologies get adopted and as we realize these different things we can do, it's going to become more people are going to start using it, and more people aren't even going to start realizing they're using these technologies simply because the benefits just outweigh any
Yeah,
worry that people may have about these new technologies. So,
yeah, I agree. I watched
mhm.
the interview with Motion, real smart guy, and
Mhm.
he's exactly right. And at the end of the day, it's like most technologies. Do you need to know how your light switch works to know that you need to have a light switch? Do you
Right.
need to know how homomorphic encryption works to know that you want to feel comfortable giving your patient data to your hospital and letting them have researchers utilize it for the betterment of humanity? Well, sure, I'd like to do that, but can I trust it?
Right.
Right? And now that that trust is there, then the permission is there, right?
Right. Exactly. It's definitely it's the way. I mean, all of our society is going. Really, like you mentioned, you don't need to know how a light switch operates in order to use one. So,
Yeah,
we're eventually going to hit a point. I think Motion said in the next 5 years or so, these technologies are going to be behind websites and powering things that you don't even know. And then when you
yeah,
find out, you're just like, oh, okay, well maybe I can
yeah,
trust this technology.
yeah. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Well, ironically enough, that kind of segues into the last thing I wanted to talk about, which what do you think is a biggest obstacle for some of these technologies to be adopted?
You know, well, so we were just speaking about kind of the consumer or the end user.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. They want to know that the trust is there. They don't know the security at their bank and they're still using the banks,
Mm,
right?
true.
They don't know the balance sheet of the banks, they're still using the banks. But when you typically what happens is that there'll be some type of event or sea change, like a great recession, a great financial crisis, tech crash,
Mm-hmm.
and a war. As you see a lot of this stuff kind of smoldering now, that people start to look for alternative measures or are forced into things. Like you don't look for a new set of tires really sometimes until your tires start to blow out, at least
Right.
in my case. But I think I think the consumer doesn't really look for these things. They might just see them as value added or benefits
True.
that are part of a product or a service that's just better for them. I don't think people were looking for really rides on demand when Uber came out, but then Uber showed the world like this is a better taxi.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it's better in every way. It's easy. It's cost effective. Yeah, I'm going to start using that. So I don't think they obviously the consumer of it, but I think what it really to answer your question specifically, I think what it takes is it takes visionaries, it takes entrepreneurs, it takes investors, it takes developers, it takes people who want to be a part of things like this and take somewhat of a risk at some shape or form
Mm-hmm.
to participate in building these new technologies, these new businesses, these new services, making better products, and getting them out to the people and the consumers, and them saying, yes, we like this. This is better. And that's for us. When we explain what DLT alert is, it's techno babble at a lot of levels. But when
Yeah.
you tell people this is a way to get very fast, very affordable, specific coverage that you don't have to do anything with, you never have to file a claim, and you can get paid in 24 hours if there's an incident that you're not even aware of,
Yeah.
with a complete report attached to it within minutes of this whole hack occurring. And do people really care that we're using Polygon or Polylang and zero knowledge or whatever? They don't know.
No.
Maybe they do, but they don't really care. They know, hey, this was really easy to buy. My trust is super high because my friend who runs this other business told me it worked for him, and it's everything that they said. And I get paid in 24 hours. My gosh, when I filed a claim with my other insurance, it took 7 months.
Yeah. It's
You know,
I think an easy way to kind of delineate that is it's the ease of use and the speed, maybe not speed of recovery, but just the speed of financial reimbursement. So,
yeah,
I mean,
that's a big one, right?
yeah, I
That's
mean,
something everyone can understand.
yeah, we've seen it ourselves when we talk to people. Um, we've had clients where if we're talking to the director of IT, they're looking for A, B, C, X, Y, Z, this thing, that thing, the other thing, and then when we talk to the CEO, there's all they care about is does it work? That's
Yeah,
it. So,
yep,
it's when we start to talk about this technical babble, you're definitely going to have these people that are super interested in it and they really care. Like, oh, he uses
yeah.
blockchain, he uses Web3 smart contracts. Oh, that's really cool. And then there's other people who are just going to be like, payouts are faster. Sign me up. That's all they care about.
I presented to a very experienced MSP CEO. He's got some really cool tech that they got out in the marketplace. Showed him the whole presentation. He's like, go back 3 slides. Go back. He points at the screen. He's like, see that bullet right there? Yeah. Immediate 24-hour payouts. He goes, that's what I care about.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, okay, why does that matter so much to you over all this other stuff? It's like, one, I don't really understand or care about this other stuff that you're talking about. But I can tell you this, if one of my clients gets hacked and they get a check for $50,000 the next day or a wire into their account, I'm going to get a chunk of that to fix their problem. They're up and running faster. I'm getting paid. I'm doing my job. We have trust in your process. It's a win-win-win. I love it. Let's do it. Like, okay. So it's just echoing what you just said. It's what matters the most to the end user. Probably in this case is money. Why else do people get insurance?
True.
They want a level of comfort, or they don't have to think about it, right? But what's 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 the functionality of that is that you're comfortable because you know you can get paid. you know
Right.
you can get money to recover in an amount proportional to your incident. And
Mm-hmm.
and when we do that accurately, that spreads word of mouth, and and that's a nice event. And the techno stuff on the back end, happy to talk about. It's really interesting. You all seem really smart and visionary and everything. Um, but yeah, it's just a new technology, but it's really a new. It's based on a new foundation that that hasn't we haven't really seen since, in my opinion, since the internet really came out and you started seeing e-commerce and a lot of things going online, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is really more, not like a e-commerce thing. This is more of a business technology process that can be
Mm-hmm.
implemented in a myriad of ways across a myriad of businesses to enable everything from real world asset tokenization to any type of insurance claim adjudication to database management. There's so many different things. Supply chain is a big one, right? You're talking about the NFTs for tickets. That could be plane tickets, art, anything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the transference of assets between banks and the information is on chain, one chain to another. And there's a company called DTC who facilitates about $4 trillion a year in equity sales or transactions, and it's really somewhat of an antiquated process. So if
Mm-hmm.
they could put all that on chain and that all becomes immutable, a level of trust is increased, and other institutions who are using DTC, for example, a hedge fund and a major bank like JP Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
now the expediency of these clearing of stock trades or whatever trade it is happens faster. It happens in a more trusted format, and then they can attach automated functionalities to the data that's now on chain. It's not just a database entry, right? It's in a format that can be exchanged almost fluidly amongst each other. You can't do that with a database because JP Morgan's not going to give XYZ hedge fund access to their database,
Right.
right? But when you start to use zero knowledge and you start to use these immutable formats and things like that, you can allow some information to go out. You can allow smart contracts to be automated to interact with that information, right? And so now you have a whole new paradigm of capabilities that are available because of this thing called blockchain and all this other cool tech that's springing up around it. So
Right. Absolutely. That's something we kind of touched on last week or previous weeks is that it's really going to boil down to when developers start making these technologies baked into the products. That's when the end users are going to start consuming it more often because, as we mentioned earlier, they won't know. And,
yeah,
like we said, like we were just discussing, a lot of times they don't really care about these technologies. They just care about does it work. So if it
yep,
makes sense for the developers to build it that way, which is definitely the way we're pushing and leaning towards in the next couple coming years and right now, yeah, we're going to see a lot more people definitely adopt these technologies and products.
yeah. No, we're real excited about it, and you know, it's here and it works. We're doing it.
Yeah, and I think that is a good point for us to stop and call it a good day. And
Okay.
we thank all everybody for listening in and tuning in and listening. And thank you, Brian, again for taking the time to chat with us again.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure. Thanks, Robert.